Hello, 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 hello. That looks pretty good. How you doing out there, folks? So this is, any of you folks caught the stream a couple of weeks ago. A couple of weeks ago I was building a new computer live on Twitch, and then have been having fun and games setting up cameras and things on the new setup, and I think this is the first time I've actually just like streamed a normal stream on the new thing. So yeah, what are we, how's everybody doing out there on a Saturday morning? This is normally the time for sitting, eating cereal, and watching cartoons, but that's not what we're gonna do today, because so let me give you a little bit of background on what we're gonna do on today's stream, and a bit of context to catch up for the folks who might be watching this later on the replay. So let's switch to that view there. There we go. That's Illustrator. That's Adobe Illustrator. We're going to need that in a minute. But before we do that, so a little while ago, I was putting a video together, and bring up my blue sky, because that's where all the chat about this thing is going on. And there's me, there's replies. So yeah, a while back, I was making a video, and I was talking about a project called Qmail, which is an open source email system. Mail transfer agent, MTA, runs on Unix, and I wanted, because I was making a video, I wanted like an image to go in the video, and Qmail, kind of weird, like it's public domain. So this whole thing, like it was created by a guy called Dan Bernstein, or Bernstein, never, yeah, but we'll go with Bernstein, and it's really good, and it's excellent. Why is there a middle finger image in the because I was building a suggestion for improving LinkedIn the other day, and let me show you what I came up with. That is what I was using Illustrator for the other day, is a one-click response to shills and tech bros and all the people saying that AI is more important than electricity, and I thought it might just save everyone a lot of time if LinkedIn had that as a response. And I think it probably also needs like the poop emoji, and yeah, I like that, you know. There are various ways we could make the communication process more efficient. So yeah, that's what I was working on. That's what I was using Illustrator for the other day. Oh yeah, there's a bunch of color wheels and backgrounds and CSS box models and all the other stuff that I've been working on. And yeah, so Qmail is public domain and open source, and there was a sort of logo, like, and it's completely unofficial, and I needed this image, so I found the closest thing they had to a Qmail logo, and which was this sort of thing. And there's a bunch of versions, and apparently this is completely unofficial, and someone just came up with it, and the Qmail people are like, that we don't have a logo, and I'm like, well, you're public domain, who decides what you have and what you don't? So I did that. Now, the interesting thing about making that logo is that it went from, like if I go into google.co.uk and search for Qmail logo, that page, which I created, because this is me down here, author Dylan Beattie, that went to being the #1 hit for that on Google in about 13 hours. It was like, whoa! So if you want to get to the top of Google, like right away, make some artwork, put it on Wikimedia Commons, because it's got an incredibly good site reputation. But yeah, I suggested that for the Qmail page, and if you look at the talk page for this, there will be a somewhere, view history. When are we talking here? Rollback edits. That's an unofficial logo by others, not applicable. So yeah. Anyway, so this thing's been floating around the internet for a little while now, and then a couple of days ago I got a message from, that's an incognito window, so I'm gonna need a different window. I'm gonna need that window. I got a message on Blue Sky from the people from Not Qmail, saying, hey, we found this, love it, wondering whether you'd be willing to make a version for notqmail.org, which is not Qmail. This is what they, and so they sort of came up with this, and this is something that I love to do, is to take a piece of artwork which is, you can kind of see where they were going with it, but it's, so it's geometry, it's circles and typography and that kind of stuff, and turn this into something a little bit more kind of interesting and high fidelity. So what I'm going to do today, first of all, we're going to redraw this one. I'm just going to show you how I do that in Illustrator, because that's kind of fun. But then I want to play around with it, because there's a couple of things, like this logo objectively sucks. It is the whole Qmail thing. There is a bunch of things about it which are just, so one, the sort of the font weights on the original Qmail and on this one, it's a little bit like, I like the typeface, that's kind of cool, and I like the big Q motif, but the weight of the arrows is unbalanced, and so I'm going to play around with it a little bit, and then I'll stick them all up on probably a GitHub repository, and the Qmail folks are welcome to grab whatever version of that they want. Now, another thing you'll notice is if you look at the notqmail.org, you see this thing here? The image that the version of the logo they got, it doesn't work in a circle. And one of the things, if you want your project to have any kind of identity, is you need a version of the logo or a strong visual identity, which is going to work well when it's used in little circles or little squares, and then you want like a sort of slightly more elaborate and sort of more full-featured one. So quite often the way that I think about the distinction is there's a logo and there's a logo type. And if we, let me get a code with rockstar.com. So Rockstar, which is another one of my projects, this is the Rockstar icon, and it's like a, you know, the heavy metal horns with a star kind of like punching through a wall, and that is designed so that that motif works anywhere you need something small, and there's a black and white version of that as well. That's all up on GitHub. But then the actual logo type itself, the sort of, you got more space, you use the Rockstar thing here, which I borrowed from Microsoft because they used to use that kind of typography back in the 80s. So anyway, let's have a bit of fun. So what I'm going to do is let's open up a new project in yeah, there we go, Illustrator. It's Adobe Illustrator 2025, which I like. It's not as good as CorelDRAW was in 1997, but it's all right. And then I'm going to grab that version of the logo from their site, and boom, and right click, copy that, and then let's paste that in here. Okay, so now there's always a kind of, when you're looking at this is not a terribly high fidelity piece of artwork, you know, if you crank it up a little bit. Let me just change the layout of that page. Document setup, and it's artboards, isn't it? Yeah. So artboards are what Illustrator does now instead of documents. There we go, that's what we want. And now if I do Control-0, we get that zoomed in full on there. You folks can see what was going on. And yeah, so you can kind of see where they're going. Now there's always this thing when there's so few pixels here that you kind of, like, if you look closely, I sort of assume that the middle of the O here is circular and is supposed to match the middle of the N, so we got some sort of commonality going on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to redraw this according to what I think it should look like if it's bigger, and then we're going to come up with a couple of variations just for fun. So let's go on to layers. So I want that layer there. I'm going to lock that one out, and I'm going to drop in another one in front of it. Control R for rulers. And I'm going to bring up a bunch of guides. So I want a guideline kind of across the bottom of those letters that'll give me a baseline, and I want one on the tops of the bowls there, and probably another one across the, yeah, that's a little weird because the highest point on that logo type there is the circle on the I, which is unusual. Normally the L is the highest letter, and then the I and the T, kind of the top of a T will be level with the top of the circle and the I, and maybe they've chopped that, otherwise it's going to bash up against stuff. And so while we're in here, let's also find what I think is probably the center of that Q motif in the middle, horizontally, and okay, so I think that should give us enough guides to get cracking with. So this layer here, let's call this not mail. So this is going to be the text layer on that. And let's now zoom in. Okay, so we're going to start with the O, because the O looks pretty easy, because it's a circle inside another circle. So let's grab one of those, check that I'm anchoring to guides here, which I am. Okay, so that to there, that locks those in between. Now you see there we can see quite a lot of the outside. So I think maybe to get the weighting right, these lines need to be just a little different. Let's unlock the guides, which I know there's a shortcut key, but I can never remember what it actually is. I'm going to line that up with the middle of those pixel rows, not necessary. Yeah, you see that one, the end that has definitely got like a solid cutoff, but yeah, all right. Give us a little bit more space to work with. Okay, lock the guides so I don't accidentally drag those all over the place. All right, let's do that again. So we got the O there, that's going to be a circle, so we'll drag that, lock that into there. Properties on that, fill will be solid black. Sling that out of the way for a second, duplicate it, Control C, Control V, and then let's Shift Alt on that to get a much smaller version of it. That's, yeah, that's probably maybe a little smaller. I'm wondering whether there's some kind of underlying, hello Lixwolf, welcome to the stream, some kind of underlying geometry like a grid system or something that that we could use here. This kind of geometric typography thing is, let me turn on a grid. And yeah, so that looks like optically, it looks like there's probably like a 2 to 3, 2 to 4 ratio on those things. So what we could do is let's spin up another artboard down here. Zoom that out a little bit, just throw in something here I can scribble on. And so if we have a 2 to 4 ratio, then what it means is we got a view snap to grid. There we go. So if that's our middle, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we got one of those, and then we can grab those two, and we can create a, so you can combine them, or you can make what's called a compound path. And that looks a little bit, yeah, the middle of that isn't big enough. So maybe it's not that ratio. Maybe it's more like a 2 to 3. So let's try that. And yeah, is that good? Let's boom, we'll take the fill off those and give them a bit of a stroke. Yeah, that looks visually closer to what we've got going on there. All right, that'll do. So let's make a compound path that actually, first of all, I'm going to copy and paste that so that I've got a spare one standing by I can use for other things. So we'll sling one of those over there, and then we'll grab those two. There's a really good Pathfinder tool here. We'll combine those. What do you mean intersecting paths? They do intersect, don't they? Yeah? Yeah? Weird. All right. Compound path, make. All right, grab one of those. That's a compound path. And then we can fill that. So that's black. So that's our O. Now the N here. Let me grab another duplicate of those to sling over there in case we want it later. And so we'll grab rectangle that. Snap that in down there, and that piece there. Now this is something I love doing with Illustrator, is I'm going to grab all of these, and what I'm going to do is there is a Pathfinder tool called Fragment or Divide, and that's basically going to take every intersection of any one of those shapes and turn that into a shape on its own right. And then I can ungroup that, and then, right, I don't want that one, and I don't want that one, and I don't want that one, and I don't need that one, and I want to keep the rest, and I want to combine them all using a union shape. And then let's just check. Yep, there we go. I love doing that. Like, you break the shape down into little bits of geometry and then plug it all back together. Okay, so we've got the N. Now let's just take a quick, if I grab those two and bring them up here, and let's just take the fill off there completely and give them a red stroke so we can see the outline. This way we'll be able to see. Let me change the document color mode here to RGB, because I'm pretty sure this is all going to end up on screens, not on print. So that, yeah, that's pretty close. All right. So I think, yeah, the underlying kind of the grid system geometry there is probably a pretty good place to start, and then we can tweak it a little bit as we need to. So what do we got going on? So let me smack that artboard out so we've got enough space to mess with this a little more. And all right, so we got to make the T. Now I'm gonna assume here that the T there is just, it's the exactly half of the circle. So let's bring in one of those. That comes down to the halfway point. That looks about right for the height. That's maybe a little shorter. No, that one, yeah, that's what we need. We'll chop off the other half of that circle, and we'll chop off everything outside that. So we'll grab that lot there, and Pathfinder, we're gonna divide that, grab that, ungroup it, and then chop out that piece, that piece, that piece, all of those, and that. Come on, boom, there we go. And is that? Yep, there we go. Union that lot. And that T is level with the top of the O, isn't it? So that's, okay, cool. So there's that in there. Union those. So I think that's what the original's going for. I think that's pretty close to what what we're working towards, certainly for the first iteration of this thing. I'm just gonna jump over to Blue Sky, and I'm gonna tell people we're doing this in case anybody else wants to stop by, because that would be fun, right? Cool. Mail. All right. Well, the I and the L are very, very easy here. So let's do the M, because the M looks a little bit like maybe that's a slightly different geometry to it. I mean, we could, the easiest way to make the M here is we grab an N and then we take another N and we join that onto that. But that, see, it kind of looks to me like the original, those, yeah, it's, those bits are smaller. How are we doing on the proportions? If we compare that one to that one, take off the grid just so I can get that lined up. Yeah, you see, the problem we have now is that it's, if the width matches, then the height is off. So let's tweak it. All right, back all that out. That's off, that's off, that's off, that's on, back on. There we go. Snap to grid. Okay, so what I want to do with this is we got two of those, so let's nudge those. Okay, there we go. So that's the right shape, I think. That's the right outline shape. And now what we need to do is we're going to chop out. We got a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 there. So those are going to be our intersects. And I think I can just grab that and I can round the corners of all of those. Let me show outlines on this so I can see what's actually going on with it. And now we want that to line up very approximately. So that's our midpoint there. So that's the middle radius of those things. So if I grab those two and bring them down to, yeah, at this point the grid is not going to give me what I need, because the granularity of the grid is not right. Now there's a package called Visio. Visio is amazing. One of the cool things Visio does is when you zoom in on something, it increases the grid frequency. Let's go edit, preferences, guides and grid, and let's give ourselves 16 subdivisions. And there we go. So now we've got a grid line we can align those things to. So if I pull that down one further, all right, and now I should be able to punch that out of there. And we got our M. Now the A is real easy because the M is just an O with frilly bits. That's exactly how I learned letters in school. We started with Ollie Orange, and then Alice Apple was like Ollie Orange with a little extra bit. And then I can't remember what was next. It's been a long time. All right, so the A there is just one of those, but we are gonna drop in a, oop. That's the descender, but also then, now I'm thinking if you look the way the T works, the question with the A is, is there any curl on the bottom of the descender here? And I don't think there is. So let's try, what if we just chop out that? So then we'll grab those and Pathfinder divide them, isolate the group, we'll get rid of that one, that one, that one, grab the rest, union, no, ooh, interesting. Yes, yes, yes. Cool, all right. And then the I and the L. Time for some seriously advanced graphic design technique here. That's there, and it's got a circle on the top. And the L is just that, only bigger. Come on. Thank you. And all right, so let's just play with the kerning a little bit. I think those one, yeah, there we go. That's all right. What is not Qmail? It's not Qmail, Sully. It's an open source project. So what we're doing today is this. Notqmail.org is an open source successor to Qmail. And they pinged me and went, hey, we love the logo that you made for Qmail that Qmail didn't want because it's yeah. Not Qmail is the collaborative open source successor. So Qmail, I ran my own Qmail server for about 20 years. It is an astonishing piece of software. It's really, really good. And yeah, I stopped just because I got fed up of playing the run your own mail relay anti-spam game, because it's trivially easy for people to file complaints, invalid, like false complaints against you, and just laborious to get them reinstated. All right, so there we go. I'm gonna say that is done. What I'm gonna do is take off the fill. I'm gonna put a stroke on it, which is gonna be red. And oh, that's interesting. Okay, cool. Right. So let's just see how well, if I line that up with that and bring that down. Okay, so the All right, so the kerning we got doesn't exactly match the kerning that they got, but that's all right. I think we can probably live with that. I mean, it's trivial to fix. We do that, and then we do that. Oop. Yeah. Come on. Why does that not want to move? Right. Probably because there's a grid snap going on. There we go. Okay. Right, where shall we stick this? Let's stick this in. Dropbox. I'm going to put that window over there just because I don't know what's in my Dropbox right now. There we go. Not qmail.org. There you go. Cool. All right. Right, let's draw the chunky bit in the middle. So let's go into the layers here. That there is all on that one. So I'm going to lock that and switch it off. I'll keep the guides. No, we don't need those guides. All right, let's get that out of the way while we do the next bit. And so this bit is gonna be so we got these arrows sticking out everywhere. We got the green kind of motif there with the red bit in it. So let's call this the Qmail logo, and then we'll put the knot over the top of the whole thing. So I'll stick another layer on here, and this can be the arrows, which are behind the Qmail thing. Okay, how are we going to do the arrows? Real easy way to do this. Let's grab a line segment tool. That to there. There we go. We got an arrow, or we got a line. We'll crank up the thickness on that to about there. We'll give it arrowheads. Now those arrowheads are that kind of shape, I think, but they're not that big. So let's link those. Unlink them, set them both to 35. Link them again. Yeah, there we go. Is there a slightly fatter arrowhead? I mean, it's pretty easy once you've drawn the arrowhead to turn the shape outline, or turn the shape with the arrowheads and everything into an outline. You can then go in and edit to your heart's content. Let's go with, I think that one is probably the closest thing to what we got. Now, if I knock that stroke down a little bit, and I'll go back into the arrowheads and crank those up a little bit. Okay, and now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take that, I'm gonna expand the appearance. No, I want to not expand appearance, I want object expand. Expand the stroke, there we go, and pathfinder that. So what that gives me now is it gives me a shape that is the same shape as that was when it was a line, which means I can grab that and I can do that kind of stuff with it. So I can tweak the weighting. Okay, that looks, yeah, that's pretty good. And let's grab one of those, and we are going to copy, paste, align those. And then we are going to transform that. We are going to rotate that by 30 degrees. And Yes, so Pandari says if the green was more blue, the red-green colorblind people may have a... Yeah, this is like a textbook. I know the technical term for this because I was researching it this week. Deuteranopia is red-green colorblindness. If you are looking at this... Now, check this out. If we go to the notqmail.png there, and I'm going to go into my browser settings here, and I'm going to go into accessibility, and I am going to go into where has the thing gone, because somewhere there is a emulation. It's there. Rendering. What do I want to render? I am going to, let me crank that up so you folks can see what we're looking at. I can emulate vision deficiencies. That's what it looks like if you got blurred vision. That's reduced contrast. That's deuteranopia. And that's protanopia. And yeah, you can see how if you're... Now, this is common. Like 12% of men have this particular kind of red-green color blindness. So if there's like 20 randomly chosen people in a room, pretty good odds one of them is going to see the logo as that. Which does not work very well for all kinds of reasons. So I think we can probably do better. But let's start by doing the thing that they asked us to do, or they asked me to do, which is to draw a nice version of the logo they've already got. And then we are going to go and come up with some suggestions for what it might look like if it was better. I have no dog in this fight, as the saying goes. I don't really mind. Let's rotate that another 30 degrees. Yep, okay, that's there. And then rotate that another 30 degrees. All right. And I mean, I'll align all of these using the alignment tool. Do another one. Dum, dum, dum. There's one thing that Visio does, and which I think some versions of CorelDRAW did as well, because if you copied, pasted, and then transformed something, and then copied and pasted it, it would apply the same transformation every time you pasted it. So you could just kind of rotate one, and then you go bang, 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 and you just get them cascading. Now, I have no idea if that feature exists in Illustrator. Hang on, no, I need to copy that, paste that, right-click that, rotate that. And there we go. Okay, so now I've got, if I go onto my layers, and I turn off that one, that one, that one, and I go arrange, align center, and I go align vertical, align center. Beautiful. So now what I want to do is we want to chop out the middle, because if you look at the original, those don't go all the way to the edges. So let's grab everything on my arrows. We'll move that so that it's roughly in the center of the original motif. So I'm going to cut it off just somewhere behind the layer of green there. So I'm going to grab a ellipse and drop that in roughly kind of here. Turn that layer off again. Grab that, align everything again. Align, center, center, okay. And now what I can do is let's grab everything, unselect that one, union those shapes. That just makes one big one. Now we'll grab that one, we'll chop that out of the middle, gives us that. We'll go into that, go and isolate the group, pick all of those, delete those, and back onto layers and come out of isolation mode. Turn that back on, and now our arrows layer, we've got this one shape which we can fill with black. So there's all of those. Okay, happy with where that's going. Right, let's lock that and turn it off. And now we've got the actual Qmail-y logo-y bit. So let's go onto that layer there, make that visible. We got a circle roughly that kind of size. Okay, and let's stroke that no fill. Duplicate another one of those, and those two are centered. Hold Alt, Shift, drag from the center, constraining proportions. line that up with roughly where we think it's gonna end up, which looks like around about there. Okay, and then those and those, and see, it worked that time. That's given me a compound shape. And then we want to drop in a rectangle, which is, I'm just going to eyeball that to roughly the right kind of shape. That's maybe a little tall. Zoom in a little further. You kind of find yourself looking at, you know, two very small pixels side by side and wondering, you know, which one's which and what lines up with where. And then there is also this, that snaps to there, and that comes across to probably there. All right, so now we can grab all of those. So onto layers, let's turn off that one. And I'm gonna do that trick with the pathfind divider again. So there's that, and now go into the group. So we wanna delete that bit, and that bit gives us the gap. We're gonna take the rest, we're gonna union, nope, not all of that, because there is, so that, and that we want to union, and that one. Yeah, all right, that'll do. So back on there, switch on the not mail, switch on the arrows. This is starting to look like, that whole thing wants to be a little smaller, I think. Which then means this thing needs to be a little lower, so we can grab those points and just bring those down. All right. No, I don't like it. I'm gonna back all that out and do that little bit again. Right, so, okay, I see the problem, I think. Right. So it's not visually apparent whether that should be aligned, but I think it probably should. I think that the block here should be centered in the circular piece. So let's switch that layer off. And now we can grab that, and I'm gonna go object, align, horizontal center. Did that? No. Yeah, that didn't, that object, align, center. There we go, that's what I was looking for. And then there's this notch piece cut out adjacent to that for the right, and that bit needs to be a little taller. Turn the backing layer back on. All right, that, and that, and that. We're gonna shrink the whole thing just a little. All right, so let's line up the top and the left with where we think those want to go, and then we can do a constraint drag. Maybe make that just a tiny bit bigger that way, and a tiny bit bigger that way. Yeah, there's definitely some kind of slightly offsetness, but I don't like it, so I'm not going to keep it. And that can come in just a little further. Okay, and now we can do the trick with the thing. We'll turn that off. Grab all of those properties. Doing divide. Isolate the group. Lose that. Nope, we want to keep that piece. We want to lose that piece. And that piece, and that piece, and everything else, that plus that plus that plus that is going to give us our Q. All right. Now there's this line on the original Q here. So let's just replicate some of these colors here. So the fill color on that is this sort of forest green. That's maybe a little darker. No, why is this still in there we go, RGB. Actually HSB, and turn down the brightness a little. Saturation's all the way up and the hue is in the right place. So that's probably, yeah, it's still too bright, isn't it? A little darker. Yep. Okay, so onto layers. That's on, that's on. Turn off the original. Let's just pick up that not mail layer there. That's not supposed to be there. All of those and all of those, and we'll fill those with, oh, hang on, and that one. Let's group that, fill that with black, take off the stroke. No outline on any of that. There we go. And nail that one. So that's off, that's off, that's off. So we got this red little motif. I think that's on the original, like the Qmail logo, which isn't a Qmail logo. Yeah. So let's enable our that one. But what I'm going to do is set the opacity on that to like 50% so we can see the original shape through the middle of it. Because this one, I think we just kind of want to draw a thing like sort of that. And it's not, there aren't enough pixels to know what's actually going on with the corners of that thing. So let's round them all the way. And then we'll pick a RGB red. I want to, what I really want to do is to switch, because I already switched the document to be an RGB. No, I haven't. There, right, save that. Does that now give me RGB color swatches? Whatever, all right. Illustrator is one of those programs that I sort of figured out one step at a time, and it's a sort of common pitfall with a lot of software. Like, I want to do a thing, I figured out how to do a thing. I definitely have not found the best way to do that thing, but I have found a way to do that thing, and so I'm just going to stick with that because that's good enough for what I'm trying to do right now. And then, you know, ages later you come along and you're like, oh, I had no idea there was a much better way of doing it. Okay, so let's align those. Align horizontal center. All right. Okay. So what we've got now, I think, is turn that off, that's on, and go back and set that opacity back to 100%. So now we've got something which is approximately like the original Qmail logo, or the Qmail non-logo, because this is the not Qmail logo, not the Qmail, not, you know what I mean. And okay. And then the last piece of the original is they got this kind of not allowed stamp across the middle of the whole thing. So let's draw in one of those. So new layer for that, and we'll call this denied, because why not? And so grab okay, properties, take off the fill, stroke to roughly what the original is, which looks like around about there. And then it's got this line across the middle, so the easiest way to do that is let's draw a line from the top to the is that drawing lines? No, I want the line segment tool. There to there. No. Start that again, because that's not completely straight. There we go. Hold down Shift, that constrains it. We'll rotate that. -45. Okay. What are we thinking? Close enough? I think so. All right. So let's actually, what I'll do is we'll pathfind, nope, we'll object expand the stroke, and then we're gonna pathfind it, because then we get an actual shape that's that shape. And there's layers, and there's that, and there's not mail, and there's the arrows, and we turn off the original, and so the key thing here is when we toggle that original kind of on and off, it looks like everything gets a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier. So I think what I probably want to do there is let's give the whole thing a little bit. Okay, so say we start with the arrows. Right, first thing to do is let's duplicate this, because what I'm about to do here may be destructive, and I want to be able to get it back if I can. So let's, okay, that's fine. Nope, that's not fine. I don't want to do that. I want to visible that, make that visible. Then I want to drag the artboard to get a duplicate of it. And then I'm going to set that layer back to there. All right, so let's make the arrows on that layer a little bit heavier. What I'm going to do there is give them a bit of an outline. I'm going to make that black. I'm also going to chamfer or round off the corners of those, just because if you zoom right in, I think it makes it look a little bit classier. So then let's go to layers here and toggle that. Okay, so the arrows, you can see you got some compression noise around it, but it's not quite as sort of as chunky as it was. And the same thing. Now this that mail down there. Yeah, kind of looks like the radius on the M that they used doesn't, it's not the same radius as was used on all the other letters in that part of the logo type. Now let's just set the fill on that to be RGB black. RGB, all the zeros, because it should be. I think if I grab, we'll do the same trick on here. I'm going to give that a tiny little bit of a stroke. And we'll pick the same. What do I want to do with that? Yeah, okay, that'll do. Yeah, okay, we're good. Cool, right. And we'll round the corners around just a little bit. And now I think that means we won't get quite so much. Yep. And then the text maybe just needs to be a little bigger. And obviously then we need to tweak the positioning so that everything still lines up. Right. Yeah. All right. I'll call that version 1. So let's grab the I'm just going to make a GitHub repository, and I'm going to do it over there because yeah, I'm logged into GitHub and it shouldn't be on the stream. New repository, and did I have a Qmail logo? No, I don't. Let's make a new one. Yeah. Do I need a git ignore for this? I don't think so. A license. I don't know what license is Qmail. Is not Qmail under. It is under a about. There they are. Is there a license on here? There. Wow. So they haven't just got a standard GPL or something because of the logistics of a bunch of people going, we took public domain software, because Dan Bernstein put Qmail in the public domain, and they are explicitly saying, we took something that was in the public domain and we claim no copyright over our changes. What is the unlicense? Maybe the unlicense is a good one for it. Which dedicates works to the public domain. Excellent. That'll do. Yay, the unlicense. Right, boom. Grab that, there's that. Terminal that. All right, we got a folder, so file save as. That was in D projects, GitHub, Dylan BT, Qmail, not Qmail, logo, not Qmail, logo. All right, so what I can do now is let's grab this version, which is that one. I'm going to crop that upward in I mean, we can go for like the hard crop where you literally just get the content of it, and then assume that anyone using it is going to be smart enough to put their own kind of padding and stuff around. No, we're not going to do that. Sorry, humans, I don't have faith in you to get that right. And then I go file export for screens, and we say we would like to export that one as a 1200 pixel. So we won't export that, we won't export that. We'll export that as a 1200 pixel PNG and as a SVG version. Yeah, that's probably enough. So cool, okay, export those. SVG version looks pretty good, works okay in a browser, that renders fairly nicely, and we've got a PNG version of that as well. What is going on there? There's some weird artifacting, like just right on the, is that, No, it's just Windows preview being slightly weird. There's a little bit of jagginess on my screen, but I think it's just artifacting when it's scaling the PNG. Okay, so there we go. So we've got the original logo and that one. Now, they got this version up here, which is, I think they've just inverted, like literally inverted the color palette 1-to-1. which I think looks a little bit odd, but I think there's something in it. And I think there is potential to, so let's take that version, and then what I'm going to do is we're going to spit out a variation on that with a slightly different color scheme. So I'm going to grab that one. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand that fill and stroke, and then we are going to union those so we get that as a single shape. And I'll do the same with that. All right, that one doesn't want to let me do it. So that's blue on top of a kind of pink color, and I think we maybe could go with something. I mean, so the diametric inversion of that would be if we grab that green color we got there, bring up the hue, saturation, brightness, and the hue goes to 146 plus 180. That's not bad. Kind of like that. We have accidentally ended up, I think, with the colours of West Ham United, which by a coincidence is Steve Harris from Iron Maiden's favourite football team. Hello, ABC Mini user. Good to see you. The next letter series video, I made the mistake of committing myself to something that was going to have a lot of episodes without having figured out exactly what episode was going to be. And yeah, I'm pretty sure what KLMN are going to be. I just need to find the time to get around to putting those together. So that should probably be, those should be grouped. Those should be the same element, I think. And let's crank up the, yeah, there we go. All right, that's nice. Yeah, I think we need to go with something. It's got to be a scheme that has some light-dark contrast as well as chromatic contrast. All right. Yeah, it's kind of fun. Now, one other variation that I want to do here, like I mentioned, one of the problems with the existing logo is it does not work very well in a circular context. If we take a look at somewhere here, I had a blue sky notifications. That's there. That thing there does not really work. So let's come up with a variant of this that is going to look good on if it's round. Actually, first thing to do is let's fix the fact that it's not balanced properly. Because this thing has more space on one side than it does on the other side. And that's not ideal. So first thing is let's fix the artboards there. And let's grab that one and balance that so that it is at least central. Okay, so now the space there to there and the space there to there are probably okay. But then I think the way to fix the composition on this might be to, let me grab this one. I'm going to give this a little bit of extra space. And so I think, like, that to me just looks like it's in the wrong place. I think this lot needs to come down to kind of here. And I think this lot needs to come down on the other side. And we'll drop a baseline on there so we got something to line them up with. And then I think I'm going to grab the bottom of that, bring that down so it aligns with the baseline of that one, and then isolate that. And bring that one down to sort of there. This is the point where if they used a different word instead of not, we'd have a much easier job kind of visually balancing the way the thing fits together. Or do something different with this middle piece. Like actually move that because also the sort of the knot bit here, it cuts off the part of the Q there, which I think makes it a little bit less apparent what's going on with it. And I think you could probably mess with that to get a better sort of visual balance and something that would still work in the context of something like a circle, but which... Let's try it. So let's grab the... what do I need? I want a sphere that's the same size as, or a circle that's the same width as that one. Okay, so that's our outside circle. And then we got the inside circle is going to be that one from there to there. And that's that. Align those both ways and compound shape that. And so what I was wondering is if there is a way of creating the sort of letter form of the Q by, if we drop a descender straight down off there, and then have something like that. So what that then potentially gives us, combine that, and that one, divide that, group into that, there we go, and lose that, lose that, lose that. And that, and then that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, union all of those, round off the corners of some of those a little bit. So let's weirdness. Better. Yeah. Bring that one to the front. Now I think I can minus front that one out of there. Hello, Schmonzy. So we got this far. We got the original, the artwork redrawn and stuff, and I was just playing around with a couple of ideas that might work a little bit. So one of the things a couple of folks in the chat mentioned is that the original Qmail logo, the red-green on it, looks not ideal. And if you go to something like that one, but then let's go into our rendering accessibility, and you emulate someone who can't see red, a lot of the kind of detail in it disappears. And So Schmonzy, you know, I ran my own Qmail server for like 20 years. I used to host all my own mail. I had an old compact workstation that was surplus to requirements that I had Red Hat, and then Red Hat, and then Fedora Core and Qmail and Dan Bernstein's DJB DNS, and Courier IMAP, and yeah, it was fun. It's a really, really interesting piece of software, but yeah. So just playing around with seeing whether some are you folks open to the idea of a slightly different color scheme and maybe messing with the logo a little bit. All I was going to do is stick this up on GitHub and let you folks grab whatever you liked. So, but we got that one, and let's grab the fill color for that. So we're going to make that the kind of... There we go. I messed up because I combined something I shouldn't have combined, didn't I? So let's grab those two. All right, and now we'll move that. And that still lines up with that, because that's the kind of whole point of the not Qmail thing, is it's not Qmail. And actually, no, we got to keep the red. I'll tell you why we got to keep the red. I think we got to keep the red because the red is the denied. That being red is kind of part of the motif, I think. So that stays red, but then this one here, because if you look at that, so the way that sign tends to be constructed when it's used is the outline and the strip across the middle are the same size. There's a sort of very, very strong visual consistency to it. And so I think that this thing here, those two things need to be the same size. And so let's sling that out of the way. I'll redo that. And we'll drop in a circle, roughly that kind of shape. Spin that into there, and now that thing we can align with the center of those. So we got, that's one of our arrows, that's another one. So that's, yep. Okay. And so we'll give that take the fill off, and we'll give it the stroke. And we'll make that red, because denied. And grab let's stick a line segment on there as well. So dum, 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 dum. And then I think maybe if we're sticking with red for the foreground, the background, we'll go with something just blue rather than green, so that it doesn't get quite so lost for... Right. And so we've got now that much space between there, so that much space like to about there, which means if we nudge in the N and the O and the T a little further. So I think with this kind of variation on it, what we've got is something that is, like, overall I think it's better balanced. We bring that into the edge of that and bring that into the edge of that. The text, the not Qmail text, because we've nudged this thing off to the side a little bit, it kind of balances a little better across the composition of the image. And yeah. And so the question is, if we now take that version of it and see what it looks like in a sort of circle for social media type applications, let me grab the artboard tool and we're gonna stick another one of those over there, because I think then what you could do is you get a version of it. If we remove the text, let's see what that's going to look like with a circular frame around it. Layers. Yeah, let's... I just discovered a weird thing I didn't know this did. That's neat. 700 by 300 and 200 by 200. Okay, there we go. Now we've at least got that somewhere where it should be pretty easy to drop in something aligned to the center of the artboard. View guides. Wrapping the text around the bottom. You mean so it actually flows around that way? Ooh, that's an interesting idea. It would be trivial if the text was actually text, but the text is not text. However, what we can probably do very, very hard to make this kind of thing look good, because once you either the tops of the text end up too close together, or the bottoms of the text end up too far apart. But hang on, let's try. You know what? Oh, no. I want to delete. Ooh. Yeah, maybe. Grid, snap to grid off. Right, we got a guideline on there, one on there. So that gives us the center of that, which means I can drop in an ellipse out of there. Bring that down to the baseline there, maybe a tiny bit. You know what this has given me very, very kind of slight vibes about right now is this. But, you know, there are worse vibes to channel, inadvertently. Right, if we scrub that and turn the guides off and grid. What I'm wondering is whether this would look better if instead of trying to wrap knot around the path like that, let me show you. We just had it on a 45-degree baseline. Let's get that lined up properly. Yeah, all right, that is lined up properly. Curious. Anyway, I was looking at whether this works as a circular version. So let's grab that and align those central. Hello, Damia. So there's a project called Not Qmail, which is an open source successor to Qmail, which was an open source, well, no, public domain mail relay agent from way back in the 90s and 2000s, which is awesome. And I made a version of their logo because I couldn't find a good one, but it turns out they don't have a logo because it's a public domain project. So Pandari is suggesting using a different font for Not, since it's not Qmail after all. No, I like the chunky kind of the geometry of that font. And I don't think there is... I mean, you either go with something which is kind of similar but not exactly the same, and then it's like you did it by mistake, or you go with something which is dramatically different, like a kind of handwritten script, and at that point, I think you lose the kind of boldness of just having everything being very geometric. So that gets you that far, which means if we pull that into there, that down, that out, and that down, and now I can delete that. Tell you what, if we bring that in so it just touches the bottom of the descender on the Q, then we grab this lot, bring that in so that's the same size as that. Now we've got a variation on the logo that exactly kind of hits the edges of a circular bounding, well, bounding ellipse, bounding circle. Crank that out to give it a little bit of space, and then we can bring in the artboard. And I think maybe with the knot angle to 45 degrees, it probably makes sense to go back to the original version of the sort of the Qmail element thing itself, where that part is centered along the rest of it. So let me fix that up. What I'm going to do, I'm going to grab that, anchor that to there, divide that, lose that, which means that can now come across to there, and so can that. And we're just going to steal the colors directly from Quadrophenia because, hey, why not? They had people for this. Where's the eyedropper tool? So I want one of those. So that's for us. Come on. Yep, okay. Four 194. Yep, all right. Oh, that's nice. If you line that up just right, the T kind of just creates a little bit of empty space for it around the way that fits together. We've lost. That. Fun and games. Right. What I'm going to do is why are there arrows? We don't know why there are arrows. The Qmail original logo was like a Q with arrows because it sends mail. So yeah. I guess. I don't know. Not my circus, not my monkeys. This is just having a bit of fun, but building on top of all the stuff that's already out there. Right, which versions do we want to keep? Because I'm going to rearrange. Okay. Right, I'm going to wrap up in like 5 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the ones that... so we got the original logo. So that's just the high definition version of the one that's already on the web. So that is the not Qmail original logo. So we'll drop that one. or rather we'll export that one, make sure there's a good quality SVG of that. I'm going to stick the Illustrator file up on GitHub anyway. That one, not so much. That one I kind of liked, and that's a variant of that one that works for social media applications. That one not so much, that one not so much, that one not so much, that one didn't have anything on it. That's garbage, so we can scrub that out anyway. So let's delete that one and delete that one. Yeah, no. So that can be not Qmail, blue variant logo. And just for good measure, let's create one more version, which is going to be the original layout and color scheme, but tweaked to be version that'll work better if you export it as an icon type image. You're very welcome. A little bit of fun for a Saturday morning. So if we take, let me spin up a guideline. So that's our center guide. That's one of those. Okay, so that'll give us our artboard bounding box, which means that's up to there, into there, into there. Come on, anchor, that's it, snap to that, and that's down to there. All right. Yes, yes. Let's just rename a couple of those ones. All right. Hello, Stoney, how are you? You've just caught the very tail of the stream. I'm about to drop off. We've been having fun and games with Illustrator. I gotta fix one thing. Those are not proper black. They are CMYK black. And I want them to be RGB black. Okay, cool, there we go. And stroke should be that one. And let's just make sure that the text is the same. Yeah. Right, folks, that's a wrap. I released this work into the public domain. If you like it, cool. If you don't like it, cool. Don't care. Yeah. I shall ping the folks over on Blue Sky and be like, here you go. And yeah, pick whichever variant you like. Right, I'm going to go and make some lunch. Thank you for tuning in, folks. That's fun. Saturday morning stream, just poking around, having fun for a few minutes. And hope you found that insightful.